will remain on the wide open plain. From the skies on high, nothing has changed. Stars are peering out again. In the wave of wind, flood of rain, we are washed grain by grain. We will not hide inside the shadows when the day begins again. We won't be watching from your window in the wide open plain. Oh, they come to me one by one, and the little time remains. I felt the sting of deeds I'd done by which I'd hoped to gain. The melodies of songs unsung are drawn out slow with pain and swell beyond horizon lines on the wide open plain. You will not see me up and running, for there are no heights to gain. We will surely see it coming in the wide open plain. From the wide open plain, I wake up trembling in the morning to a cold and soundless rain. I know beneath these streets of morning is a wide open plain.
Today in Acoustic Guitar Sessions, we have the wonderful singer-songwriter Doug Paisley with us. Glad to have you here, Doug.
Great to be here.
It's good to see you. First, you've done a ton of interesting projects over the years. You had a duo called Russian Literature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you two also did a Stanley Brothers thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you tell me about that? How did that come about? What did you do as Russian Literature, and obviously the way it changed as you did Stanley Brothers songs.
Well, it was a lot of collaborations with a friend of mine from Toronto, Chuck Ehrlichman, who I've played with for a long time. And the Russian Literature one was actually just, we were doing text from some of our favorite Russian books. Like one of the ones we did was The Death Soliloquy from Fathers and Sons by Turgenev. And then we would put music to it. Uh-huh. I mean, not a huge commercial appeal for that kind of thing, but that wasn't really the point. Right. And then the Stanley Brothers one, we and I have always played bluegrass, and I started out, before I ever wrote songs or anything else, I was always just playing bluegrass bands, and particularly focused in on the Stanley Brothers. I love George Shuffler's playing, their guitar player, and I love the harmony singing. So we just kind of wanted to do a genuine, heartfelt tribute to that music. And actually, a lot of the recordings we did on an electric guitar and a Telecaster and a Wurlitzer. So it wasn't like we were trying to recreate, the bluegrass sound. We were just sort of going with those songs, and particularly the harmonies.
One thing to me that connects all those projects is kind of a deep love for traditional American folk and country music. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you said you used to play bluegrass before. Is that something that you always listened to?
Yeah, when I was a kid, when I was really young, like in grade school, I was really into particularly John Lennon and those early Beatles tunes. And then I got really into Bob Dylan. And of course, everyone talks about how he is a real student and huge fan of that music too, and a lot of his music comes out of that. So I was really interested in him and captivated by his music and his career, but I think, inadvertently I was taking on all of the influences that he was drawing from, and I think I just kind of branched out from there. So yeah, I pretty much always have been really into, ballads and acoustic guitar playing and those traditions in American music.
Mm-hmm. In your solo music, I also hear a lot of really gentle kind of 70s folk, like Tom Rush, Gordon Lightfoot, but with more of a country twang. You also work with Garth Hudson on the latest album. Yeah. But it's a little bit more of a country twang. Where did you get the twang? I mean, you don't talk with it. I'm from the South, and you have a better Southern twang than
I don't know. I mean, I learned everything from listening to records, right? I never had a teacher. And like I say, where I live, there isn't really a lot of direct access to that kind of music. So I guess I don't know if you call that learning by rote, But I mean, when I wanted to learn how to sing, I wanted to learn to sing like George Jones and Don Williams and all those people. So, right. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I think it takes a long time on the guitar and with your singing to find your real voice. And I think until that point, it is derivative, Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I've been self-conscious about that, but in other ways, I think, if you're an opera singer, you are often taught to sing like an 18th century singer,
Right.
So that's really where my influences come from. But
Dylan too. I mean, he comes
actually,
from Duluth, Minnesota.
Well, yeah, and it's embarrassing. When I was a kid, I just was convinced that I was singing exactly like Bob Dylan. When I was like 12 and 13, I had this nasally rasp and everything, and I can't even imagine what that sounded like. But it's mimicry. And
what my point is that Dylan did that mimicry too.
Yeah,
and that was what formed his his sound that he has today.
Yeah, so I mean, it's that. I think it must come from where I listened, what I listened to, and I'm not trying to fool anyone or anything like that. But I just think it's sort of how you learn to sing. There's all these great stories about. There's one about Al Green, I think, with Sam Cooke going into the studio for the first time, and the producer's like, we don't need another Sam Cooke. It sounds great. And there's almost the exact same story about George Jones going into the studio one of the first times at Poppy Daly. And he basically he knew how to impersonate Hank Williams. Right. And the producer's like, that's great, but we don't need another Hank Williams, So I think there is this push to find your own voice and to get away from your influences. And I think that's a lifetime.
You eventually do. You eventually grow into your own voice.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I'm hugely influenced by Tony Rice, for instance, and I don't necessarily copy a ton of his licks, but there's been a lot of times where I want nothing more than just to be able to play exactly like him, right? Right. And I think a lot of players grapple with that with their heroes, and you do that and you learn a lot from it, and then hopefully there's that sort of, metamorphosis or whatever it is where you develop your own voice. So,
speaking of Tony Rice and the guitar, how did you first start learning to do flat picking?
Someone gave me Old and in the Way, which is that great, Vassar Clements and Peter Rowan and Jerry Garcia, David Grisman, that recording, which really drew me into bluegrass. And then someone gave me Manzanita, which is one of Tony Rice's great early albums on Rounder, and Live at the Cellar Door by the Seldom Seen. And that just drew me into this music, And I was into guitar enough. I'd been playing guitar for probably at least 10 or 15 years at that point. And I really wanted to know what these guys were doing, And so that was a real challenge. Another one was Whiskey Before Breakfast, Norman Blake. And, I knew enough about guitar to know that what these guys were doing was amazing, and then I really wanted to delve into it. So I think that's what really got me into. For a long time, I was just happy to strum and play Cat Stevens songs and play Dylan tunes, approximate them. And then I found this other thing that I wanted to reach for, and I think it really came out of a lot of those great flat pickers, Doc Watson as well, and David Greer's another one. So
Did you just listen and mimic, or did you have a teacher?
I never had a teacher. I took lessons for a couple years when I was about 11, and I'm glad I did because I think I got some fundamentals out of the way. But for the last 25 years, I'm self-taught, and I'm not great with tab. I've learned some stuff from tab, but I do a lot of stuff from listening to the record and just, woodshedding or noodling, whatever you want to call it, just playing it over and over again.
Right.
And for me, that's been good, going back to that idea of a voice, because you don't do it correctly.
Right.
You hear enough of it, and then you sort of go with it. And then when you actually go back to listen and see if you've learned it properly, you haven't, but hopefully you've developed something else.
How did you end up working with Garth Hudson? I know he's worked with lots of younger people over the years and is consistently, with the call, from the call forward.
Yeah.
But how did it happen with you?
One of my best friends in Toronto is friends with Daniel Lanois, who is originally from Hamilton, which is just outside of Toronto. And I had seen Garth Hudson open or play this performance in a Lanois show, which was just like an improvisational piano 45-minute piece that just blew my mind. And when I met Lanois one time, I mentioned it to him, and he said, well, he's a supportive guy. He likes to work with people, and he gave me his contact, and it just sort of went from there. It was really just, my good fortune. It was just an amazing confluence of seeing someone and having a connection. But he does work with a lot of people. He's very supportive, and he's in no way tired of music. He's so musically active and musically curious, So when you get together with him, he's just engaged with all these different things he's interested in at the time, and he really put himself into the music, and that was a huge thrill for me. So, for instance, with Garth Hudson, we recorded on this Steinway that belonged to Glenn Gould, famous Canadian pianist, and it was in the lobby of an auditorium, like hundreds of miles from my house. So that was this crazy project just of logistics to get Garth up from New York and to get us over there. And we actually brought a tape machine to this place. So, these kind of things that you do, and you're working with good people, you're going to get good results, but you're kind of just trying to create, I don't know what you'd call it, really, strange circumstances that often create good music, Yeah, you just, I'm a young kind of upstart in music, and he's a real elder statesman, and you don't really boss him around or give him instructions. You just know that what he's going to do is amazing. So we kind of put him on the piano with his headphones, and then we did our thing. And yeah, he's just he just does incredible stuff on it. So
he seems to be particularly supportive of Canadian musicians. Have you talked to him about that? Did you and he talk about?
Well, he was born where my dad was born, not far from Toronto, and he did start out playing a lot in Windsor, Detroit area, and then the band, when they met Dylan, were playing regularly in Toronto. So he has a real Canadian connection, and I think he continues to recognize that and play with people from Canada.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your gear. Tell me about this guitar. When did you get it? Is it the guitar you take on the road with you? Is it a guitar you use all the time?
Well, it's a 1954 Martin D28, and I got it almost 2 years ago. I'm a southpaw, and as all the southpaws out there will know, it's very hard to find lefty guitars. And I used to think that was a curse. Now I think it's actually a blessing, because I can't collect so much as a right-handed person can. I found it from a family up in Winnipeg, which is way up north, like north of Minneapolis. And I flew up there to buy it because I was like, man, this is not going to come up very often in my lifetime.
Right.
And they had they had pictures of their dad, who it belonged to, playing it back in the late 50s, early 60s. So it was really cool. They had these little snapshots of him at a party playing this thing. Mm-hmm. And he was a big Hank Snow player, and a lot of interesting instrumentals that Hank Snow did.
And Hank Snow is from Canada.
He's from the Maritimes, from Nova Scotia. Yeah. Or is it Prince Edward Island? Man, someone's going to really chew me up for not getting that right. But anyway, so I went up there and got it, and it is my main guitar. I play some bourgeois guitars too, which I really like. But there was something about the history with this guitar and the fact that it's really played in that it really speaks to me. And it is the main guitar I tour with. It's very stressful to fly with.
Do you have any other guitars? Do you back home?
Yeah, I'm ashamed to say I have
Well, you said
quite a
bourgeois.
few guitars. I have a bourgeois country boy, and I have a slot head, like an old D28 style 12 fret, and let's see, I've got a ES330, which is like a Gibson shallow hollow body electric guitar, and yeah. So I mean, I also like Guild X50s. They're these deep arch top guitars, and yeah, they're.
You have guitar acquisition syndrome.
Well, I feel like I've kind of leveled off a little bit, And like I say, I think if I was right-handed, every time I went into a guitar store, I'd have to make these big decisions. But
Right.
but yeah, I do have a few. Yeah.
How about pickups and amplification when you're on the road? What do you use?
Well, it's funny. I've been grappling with this for quite a while because I really like, especially coming from bluegrass, which is all about getting a pure sound and just using one mic or a couple mics. I really try and play with I use a Neumann. It's called a KM140. It's a little pencil condenser, and I try and play with that just right on the guitar. There's no pickup in any of my guitars, and this is something that really upsets most sound people.
I bet.
when it's done right, it sounds amazing,
Right.
but it's got all kinds of challenges. And I always thought, if you watch old footage from the 60s and 70s, you watch Neil Young play Helpless on Last Waltz, and he's just strumming this guitar with a full rock band behind him, just with a mic on it,
Right.
And back in the day, it was so common. I think more people were used to doing it,
So you had to do it,
Yeah, and it just, and I think people just don't have as much experience with it now.
Right.
So I'm sort of coming around to the point where I think maybe I should consider using a pickup in this. But I love the sound of a good mic when it's mic'd well, and
How often do you get Brad Paisley fans?
Actually, I was playing a show last night in Napa, California, and there was a really nice woman who was selling my CDs for me, and she was great. She actually was really pressuring people to buy them, but I was there just to meet people and say hi, and she kept saying, Brad is right here. If you want to talk to him, Brad's right here. He'll sign your CD. And actually, we have my parents live in Canada, and my mom has a cousin who lives in the States, and she called my mom one time to congratulate her on my playing at Barack Obama's inauguration. She said, "Oh, we hear your son is playing at Obama's inauguration. We're very proud of you. Congratulations." So it comes up a fair bit.
You always got the last word when your words broke down and you cried. And I reached out to hold you until your tears had all dried. Later you lay sleeping and I, with my eyes open wide, saying, why can't I be satisfied when love is by my side? How much farther will I go till I know this is a song my love can sing? This is a memory from that time. For all that sadness, it won't bring her back to my side. When I have not fallen too far down, I can make sense of it all. I can get to know the very moment your memory comes to call. And in the time I find myself alone, I never wonder once at all, oh, why can't I be satisfied when love is by my side? How much farther will I go till I know this is a song my love can sing? This is a memory from that time. All its sadness, it won't bring her back.